We are taught from childhood to ask politely, to negotiate, to seek permission, to wait our turn. We are told that fairness, patience, and humility are virtues that will ultimately lead to reward. But what if this widely accepted wisdom is a gilded cage, designed to keep the majority compliant, while a select few operate by a different, harsher, more effective code? This is not a lesson in cruelty, but a revelation in reality. A stark unveiling of how power truly operates in the hidden corridors of human ambition and interaction. Prepare to confront a truth that runs counter to everything you have been taught. A truth that, once understood, can fundamentally shift your perception of what it means to be effective in a world that often rewards not the deserving, but the decisive. Consider the societal narrative. From early education to professional life, we are conditioned to believe that asking is the polite, appropriate, and indeed effective way to achieve our desires. We fill out forms, send polite emails, request meetings, raise our hands. We operate under the assumption that if our request is reasonable, and if we are deserving, what we seek will eventually be granted. This framework of asking serves a crucial social function. It maintains order. It regulates access to resources, opportunities, and influence. It funnels ambition through acceptable channels, creating a sense of predictability and, for most, a comforting illusion of fairness. It is the mechanism through which hierarchies distribute opportunities, often ensuring that established power structures remain unchallenged. But beneath this veneer of civility, a different mechanism is at play. The act of asking inherently places you in a position of supplication. It implies a need for external validation or permission. It concedes, even subtly, that the power to grant your desire rests with someone else. In this dynamic, you are the seeker, the other is the gatekeeper. This isn't inherently negative in every context. Collaboration and negotiation are vital components of any functioning society. However, when it comes to the acquisition of true power, significant resources, or transformative opportunities, Machiavelli's brutal insight cuts through the polite facade. He observed that those who wield true influence rarely wait for an invitation, a green light, or a turn. They understand that the world is not a benevolent dispenser of wishes. It is a dynamic landscape of opportunities, often finite, where those who hesitate, who wait for an opening, often find that the space has already been filled, the resource claimed, or the advantage secured by someone else. The very act of asking in this context can signal a lack of confidence or a fundamental misunderstanding of the power dynamic at play. It communicates that you are waiting to be given rather than capable of acquiring. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine philosopher, observed the raw mechanics of power in Renaissance Italy, a period rife with shifting alliances, ambitious princes, and constant struggles for dominance. He wasn't prescribing morality. He was meticulously describing reality. His famous work, The Prince, is not a guide for being good, but for acquiring and maintaining power, often by any means necessary. And in this brutal arena, he saw clearly that the strong operate differently, particularly when it comes to securing their objectives. The strong don't ask, they take. This statement is not a call to violence or outright theft in every literal sense, but a profound psychological observation about agency, initiative, and the nature of scarcity and opportunity. At its core, taking embodies complete agency. To ask is to be reactive, to place your fate in the hands of another. To take is to be unequivocally proactive, to assert your will directly onto reality. The strong understand that opportunities are not always presented on a silver platter. They are created, identified, and seized. They do not wait for permission, validation, or an invitation from others. Their conviction is internal, not externally dependent. While not every aspect of life is a zero-sum game, many significant areas, particularly where power, influence, or truly limited resources are concerned, do operate on this principle. If one person secures a dominant market share, another company loses out. If one leader claims a pivotal role, another is left behind. The strong recognize this inherent competition and act to secure their desired share, often moving with such speed and conviction that others are left playing catch-up, or worse, are unaware that a critical move has even been made until it's too late. They are not waiting for an equitable distribution. They are shaping the distribution. Weakness is frequently characterized by indecision, hesitation, and a profound fear of taking action, especially action that might challenge the status quo or invite opposition. Strength, in the Machiavellian context, is defined by the boldness to act, to move, to claim what is desired, often before the full implications are even clear to others. The moment of hesitation, the pause of polite inquiry, is often the precise moment of loss. Those who take act as if their claim is already valid, operating with a preemptive confidence that can be disarming. The average person is often more motivated by the fear of losing what they already possess than by the expansive desire to gain something new. This psychological asymmetry means they will often avoid risk, stick to familiar patterns, and prioritize security. The strong, however, are often primarily driven by the pursuit of gain, willing to risk what they have to acquire more significant assets, influence, or advantage. This fundamental difference in motivational drivers inherently shapes their actions. They play to win, not just to avoid losing. This principle isn't about being overtly aggressive in every single social interaction. It is about a deep-seated mindset, a fundamental operating system that views the world as a place where one must assert oneself and secure what is needed, rather than passively hoping for benevolence or waiting for an opening that may never materialize. It is about understanding that every ask carries an implied no, or maybe later, while taking bypasses that entire process by creating a fait accompli, a thing accomplished and irreversible. Why does taking, in its Machiavellian sense of bold assertion and decisive action, often yield superior results compared to merely asking? The answer lies in several fundamental psychological principles that exploit inherent human tendencies and social dynamics. When you take, you establish a new reality. You don't ask for permission. You act as if you already have it. You set a precedent, or even a new default. The burden of proof, or the immense effort to reverse your action, now falls squarely on someone else. It is significantly harder for people to undo an action, especially if it is confidently executed, than it is to prevent one from happening in the first place. This concept leverages what psychologists call the endowment effect. Once something is perceived as yours, even if only by bold assertion, its perceived value increases dramatically, and people are far more reluctant to give it up or challenge your claim. The very act of claiming something makes it psychologically more valuable to the claimant, and its reversal more difficult for the challenger. The act of taking, especially when executed with conviction and without apparent hesitation, projects an unmistakable aura of confidence, authority, and certainty. People are often deeply conditioned to defer to those who appear to know what they are doing, who act decisively, and who exhibit an unshakable belief in their own right to act. This isn't just about overt arrogance. It is about a fundamental human tendency to follow perceived leaders or those who exhibit self-assuredness. This can tie into the halo effect, where one positive trait, like confidence, spills over into others, like competence or legitimacy. When someone acts as if they deserve something, others often implicitly agree, simply due to the strength of the assertion. A vast majority of people are deeply conflict-averse. Confronting someone who has already taken action, especially if they present a confident demeanor, requires significant energy, courage, and the willingness to engage in a potentially uncomfortable and uncertain conflict. Often, it is simply easier, less stressful, and less taxing for individuals or groups to let the action stand than to challenge it. The strong implicitly leverage this aversion. Furthermore, once an action is taken, those around it may experience cognitive dissonance if they disagree, but do not act. To resolve this discomfort, they might rationalize or accept the new reality, subconsciously convincing themselves that the taker must have had a legitimate reason. The act of taking often creates an immediate and undeniable sense of scarcity or urgency for others. If you claim a unique opportunity, secure a specific resource, or seize a critical position, others realize instantly that it is now gone or severely limited. This can bypass the typical deliberative process, forcing competitors or onlookers to either accept the new reality or scramble for less ideal alternatives. It shifts the entire competitive landscape, often leaving others to react to your move rather than plan their own. Ironically, those who confidently take are often, over time, perceived as more deserving, or as having a legitimate and inherent claim, even if they haven't explicitly stated one. Their decisive action implies a right. This is a subtle yet powerful psychological trick. Initial assumption, if unchallenged, can very quickly breed acceptance and eventually a perceived legitimacy. The narrative shifts from "they took it" to "they have it," implying a natural right to possession. History is often written by the victors, and the act of victory itself can reshape the perception of legitimacy. This isn't to say that taking always goes unchallenged, or that it is always without consequence. But the underlying principle is that proactive, decisive action, backed by an intuitive or learned understanding of these psychological levers, is often far more effective than passive waiting or polite requests in the pursuit of significant objectives, especially in competitive or ambiguous environments. It is crucial to understand that taking, in the Machiavellian sense, doesn't always translate to overt aggression, illegal action, or physical force. It manifests in various, often subtle, yet incredibly potent forms across personal, professional, and social spheres. The essence is the assertive claim, the proactive move that bypasses traditional requests or permissions. Let's explore some of these nuanced manifestations. In a professional setting, this means volunteering for a challenging project before being asked, stepping forward to lead a task force without formal appointment, or implementing a new process that significantly improves efficiency without waiting for explicit approval from every hierarchy. You take the opportunity to demonstrate your value, leadership, and foresight, positioning yourself as indispensable. This isn't about disrespecting hierarchy, but about recognizing where value can be created and asserting yourself to create it. This involves asserting your beliefs, values, or personal boundaries firmly when others might try to push past them, consciously or unconsciously. It is about refusing to compromise on what matters to you, even when it is uncomfortable or when faced with social pressure. This means saying no decisively, defining your limits in relationships, or articulating your non-negotiables. You take your ground, establishing your personal sovereignty against encroachment. In arguments, debates, or public discourse, this means proactively framing the discussion, defining the terms of the conversation, and asserting your perspective with clarity and conviction, rather than passively reacting to others' accusations, misrepresentations, or pre-established frames. It is about being the one who sets the agenda, not merely responding to it. You take the story, guiding how others perceive the situation, and often how they respond to it. This isn't about theft, but about being the most decisive, strategic, and proactive player in a competitive landscape. This could involve aggressively pursuing a grant, securing a valuable client through superior pitching and speed, or acquiring a key asset or piece of intellectual property before competitors even realize its full value. It is about identifying an opportunity, assessing the risk, and moving to secure it with relentless efficiency, often outmaneuvering those who are still in the asking or considering phase. You take the advantage through superior foresight and execution. In social or professional environments, this means confidently occupying physical or conversational space, asserting your presence, and ensuring your voice is heard and your opinions considered, rather than shrinking back, waiting to be invited into the conversation. It involves confident body language, clear articulation, and the readiness to contribute meaningfully. You take your rightful place, claiming visibility and recognition. The common thread across all these manifestations is proactive assertion over passive waiting. It is a mindset that rejects the assumption of permission and instead embraces the responsibility of action. It recognizes that in many contexts, the world doesn't give. It responds to those who claim. While understanding this Machiavellian principle can be profoundly empowering for self-improvement and navigating complex social landscapes, it is absolutely vital to acknowledge its dark side and the critical ethical lines that must not be crossed. Machiavelli was a pragmatist, a keen observer of human nature and political power as it existed, not a moral philosopher prescribing virtuous conduct. His observations are descriptive, not always prescriptive of what is right, applying "the strong don't ask, they take." Without a robust moral compass can lead to destructive outcomes. Unchecked taking can quickly lead to arrogance, unchecked ambition, and ultimately, alienation. Taking without consideration for consequences, established laws, basic human decency, or the well-being of others inevitably leads to resentment, opposition, and severe backlash. History is replete with examples of powerful figures who took too much, too often, and too ruthlessly, only to face their downfall. The universe or society has a way of balancing the scales. While Machiavelli famously suggested it is better to be feared than loved for maintaining power, a reputation built solely on taking without regard for others will eventually lead to profound isolation and a complete lack of true, reliable allies. Trust, while sometimes seen as a vulnerability, is a powerful long-term asset, fostering genuine collaboration, loyalty, and support. A person who only takes will eventually find themselves alone, surrounded by enemies or opportunistic fair-weather friends who are simply waiting for their turn to take. Applying this principle without a strong ethical framework can swiftly devolve into exploitation, bullying, oppression, and outright tyranny. This is precisely where the line between strategic assertiveness for personal and legitimate gain and outright villainy is crossed. The pursuit of power for power's sake, unmoored from responsibility or empathy, leads to destructive outcomes for both the individual and society. Constantly operating from a place of taking without genuine empathy, compassion, or concern for others can erode your own sense of self, your moral compass, and your ability to connect authentically. This can lead to deep internal conflict, regret, and a life devoid of meaningful, reciprocal relationships. The internal cost of consistent, ruthless taking can be immense. The purpose of understanding the strong don't ask, they take, is not to become a ruthless manipulator, nor to abandon your values. It is instead to equip yourself with the critical awareness that such a dynamic exists in the world. It is to understand why others might succeed where you might hesitate or fall short. This insight allows for a more realistic assessment of competitive landscapes. It is also about how to proactively pursue your own legitimate goals and aspirations with decisive, ethical action. It is about empowering yourself to act, not just react. Furthermore, it is about how to identify when someone else is taking from you or asserting undue power over you, so you can effectively protect yourself, your resources, and your boundaries. This is a critical self-defense mechanism. Lastly, it is about the strategic value of initiative and audacity, even within an ethical framework, for achieving your positive objectives. So how do we integrate this raw, potent Machiavellian insight into a framework of self-improvement without sacrificing our integrity or succumbing to cynicism? It is about discerning when to ask and when to take, and understanding the profound difference. It is about leveraging this knowledge for self-empowerment and protection. Cultivate proactive initiative. Don't wait for permission to be excellent, to innovate, or to solve problems. Identify opportunities where you can add value and act decisively. This is taking responsibility, taking leadership, and taking the initiative to create your own opportunities. For example, instead of asking for a promotion, take on the responsibilities of the next level up. Demonstrate your readiness through action. Master the art of the bold ask. Sometimes a direct request is necessary, but when you ask, do so from a position of strength, clarity, and conviction. Don't frame it as a plea. Frame it as a logical next step or a proposal that benefits all parties. This is taking your rightful place at the negotiation table, asserting your value rather than simply hoping for a favorable outcome. Establish and defend your boundaries. This is a crucial form of ethical taking. You take control of your time, your energy, and your mental space by clearly defining your limits and assertively defending them against intrusion. This means saying no to unreasonable demands, removing yourself from toxic environments, and protecting your peace. It is a sovereign act of self-preservation. Develop a results-oriented mindset. While intentions matter, results often speak louder. Focus on tangible outcomes and strategic execution. This doesn't mean abandoning ethics, but rather understanding that effective action is often more impactful than well-meaning but passive aspiration. It is about taking control of your outcomes. Learn to read the room and the players. Understanding when to ask and when to take requires keen observation and psychological insight. Who are you dealing with? What are their motivations? What are the true power dynamics at play? This awareness allows you to choose the most effective strategy, discerning when direct assertion is appropriate and when a more collaborative approach is required. Embrace discomfort and courage. The act of taking often involves stepping outside your comfort zone, facing potential rejection or conflict, and acting with a degree of audacity. True strength is not the absence of fear, but the courage to act despite it. The Machiavellian insight that the strong don't ask, they take, serves as a stark reminder that the world often yields to decisive action rather than polite request. This isn't a license for ruthlessness, but a profound call to agency and awareness. By understanding this principle, you gain the clarity to see where opportunities truly lie, the courage to seize them, and the wisdom to protect yourself from those who would take from you. It empowers you to move beyond passive hope and into active creation. It encourages you to build a life not just by what you are given, but by what you are bold enough to claim, ethically and strategically, for your own growth and well-being. The path to true self-improvement in a complex world demands not just introspection, but also an astute understanding of how power, human nature, and opportunity intersect. Embrace this knowledge, not to manipulate, but to empower yourself to navigate the world with a newfound strength, assertiveness, and ultimately a more profound sense of self-mastery. The choice is yours, to ask or to take.